All right, ladies and gentlemen, we would like to welcome an incredible guest today, someone who has so much to share with us, and I'm actually really pumped and excited to get into this new episode. Ladies and gentlemen, we would like to welcome Hudi Kowalsky, who is an LMHC and who does really incredible work. So welcome. How are you feeling today?
First of all, thank you for having me. It's a privilege to be here, and thank you for doing the work you do and highlighting all the different therapies and modalities and everything that you've been sharing with everyone and can you continue to share.
Thank you so much. It's such an honor for me to be able to talk with you today. And before I invite my guests onto the podcast, before we met here today, we had a conversation on the phone, and I asked you, I said, what is a topic you feel most comfortable with talking about? And not only did I say this to you, but to all my other guests that came on the podcast, I asked them, what are you most comfortable talking with? What is your niche? What is that topic that makes you so excited? And one of the topics you said was spirituality. And for a moment, I sat there thinking like, wow, that's so interesting. Out of all the topics, he chose spirituality. And for a moment, I thought, I wonder why he chose that one. But the more I started to think about it, it made so much sense. Because that really is the essence of the work that we do as therapists. So I want to ask you, what made you choose spirituality?
First of all, it was, as many things in my life, it was kind of a spontaneous, throwing things at the wall and seeing, what would land for you. I think there's a lot of left turns. The left turns are really all right turns, but to use the vernacular, the left turn. As a kid, I was always interested in science fiction and the unknown, what you can't see. And I think a lot of the work as therapist is tapping into the things that can't be seen. A lot of people come to therapy and they're down, they have anxiety, all the cliche, depression, trauma, whatever they're suffering with, and one of the roles of the therapist is to draw out that energy, the hidden energy that's within a person that they can't necessarily see, but that we're actually required to see and draw out. So that's a very spiritual task because spirituality deals. If you don't believe in what can't be seen, then this work is going to be a lot harder. It's not impossible, but it's going to be a lot more difficult and challenging. But if you have an inherent belief in things that are beneath the surface or above the surface, that are or a little bit beyond the surface, then it's a lot easier to draw it out and uncover what's already there.
So for today's topic, we're going to be taking a deep dive into spirituality and its role in therapy and healing and in mental health. Of course, sometimes there's this misconception and confusion that sometimes people mix the two, spirituality and religion, but happens to be they're different things. Share a little bit about that.
So, it's a good question, and it's an important distinction. Without getting into the dictionary definitions, because I don't know what the dictionary would say, spirituality, the way I see it, is more of like we alluded to earlier, tapping into something that's slightly above what can be seen or beneath the surface, connecting to something that's beyond ourselves. It could be the planet, it could be nature, it could be a religious power, it could be a community, it could be music, it could really be anything. Whereas religion is more about, I hate to use this word, dogmatic or dogma of following a set of rules, a set of rituals. And unfortunately, the two have been confused over the years, sometimes out of necessity and sometimes out of just ignorance. But unblending the two, and then for some people, blending the two back together, and for some people, letting them stay as two distinct entities in their life.
So what would that look like if you unblend the two?
How much time do we have?
Go ahead.
So it's a great, we're in this time of year. It's I don't know when this is going to air, but today's the day after Rosh Hashanah, Jewish New Year. And for a lot of folks who've had difficulties with the religious practices of their youth, the high holidays can bring up a lot of negative feelings or a lot of confusing feelings. And there's a lot of rituals and practices, on Rosh Hashanah, Jewish New Year, we blow the shofar, there's prayers to say, there's ritual foods we eat, and then 10 days later is Yom Kippur, a day of fasting, of being in the synagogue. It's sort of an austere, serious kind of day. And it's very easy to get caught up in God up there, the powers that be decided that this is what we have to do. We have to atone for some sort of sins we did, even though I don't think I did that many sins. And if you read through them, there's this little bunch of them. There's no way anyone could have done all the sins in the book. But then what happens is when we start to unpack it and we realize that the things were not set up in an arbitrary way. People with wisdom set this up for a reason, and we start to connect to it. What does that have to do with me? And how could I connect to this in a way beyond the rituals? And say, okay, what is in this? What is in it for me? Not in an egotistical way, but what is in this for me? And believing that this was set up with some sort of wisdom, and then tapping into that energy that's there already, but just unpacking a little bit of like the preconceived notions about it.
Exactly. And as you were speaking, this idea came to my mind is that we are a part of a group. We're not alone. We're not isolated. And I think that one of the most powerful things of using spirituality in the healing journey of mental health and in therapy is that you're not alone. And a lot of the times when people are suffering or are in pain, they feel alone. And being connected to spirituality, to, let's say, a higher power, gives you that sense of, I'm here for you. I'm right by your side. Is it okay if I share a story with you?
Of course. We love stories.
I remember I had a long day of work. I was so exhausted. I was working throughout the morning. I've seen a bunch of clients. And then afterwards at night, I had to meet with somebody. So by the time I came home, it was close to 12:30 in the morning. I was exhausted. Everybody was already sleeping at home. I went into my bed and I just felt this insane, sharp pain in my back. I didn't know where it was coming from. I fell down on the floor. I could barely speak the words, and I, tell my wife, hey, call the ambulance, call Hatzalah. And she looks at me, she's like, what's going on with you? Get back into bed. I'm like, no, this is serious. And I guess I overworked. I didn't know what was going on. And as the time kept going, I felt this pain, intense pain, and I didn't know where it was coming from. It was something I never, ever felt in my life. And I'm sitting there on a chair. I was able to get up from the floor, and my wife calls the ambulance. And for a moment there, I said, when the ambulance came, I said, you know what, I'm okay. I think I'll go back to bed. And then the guy from the ambulance, he's like, you know what, you don't look too good. I think we should take you to the hospital. And this was actually mid-COVID. Mm-hmm. So no visitors, if you come into the hospital, you're coming in by yourself. So, of course, I was aware of that, but also nervous to say, if I go in there, well, what's going to happen to me? I ended up coming out of the house. On my way out of the house into the ambulance, I felt this sharp pain. I felt like I wasn't going to make it. And I started screaming. I said, I'm not going to make it. I'm not going to make it. I'm telling you, I'm not going to make it. And the Hatzalah member looks at me and he's like, you'll be okay. You'll make it. You'll make it. And I didn't know what in the world is going on. I've never experienced such pain. I get to the hospital. The entire time I was delirious. I was screaming. I was not myself. I was in a place where I would never want anyone to be in. And I come into the hospital, and the person is trying to do an intake and ask me why I'm there. And I'm just telling her, just get me in. I need help. Please get me in. And I didn't understand what in the world was going on. As I come into the hospital, and of course my wife can't come with me because she is there's no visitors, and I'm all by myself. I can't speak to my parents. I can't have any visitors, and I'm all alone in a hospital in a place where I've never been, with people that I've never seen before, begging for some help, begging for some mercy. And I wanted medication, or I wanted something to alleviate the pain. And nothing came because they had to process everything and they had to wait for the doctors to come. And I was all alone in that bed in such severe pain. And I remember in that moment, it was such a pivotal moment in my life, because in that moment I turned to a higher power, who is God for me. And I said, God, you need to come through for me right now. And I remember just repeating it over and over and over again, saying, God, you need to be here for me right now. And if not for you, I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm not going to make it. You need to be. And I just kept saying it over and over and over again. And I remember, interesting, I envisioned this today. I envisioned in that hospital room thinking that I'm not going to make it, but I envisioned, and this is something that kept me going, and by saying, Avi, in some time from now, you're going to use this moment to share your experience with a higher power. And the need that I had at that moment to be able to rely on something greater than myself. And no one was with me. There were doctors and there were nurses and there were so many different people, but it was almost like I was invisible and nobody felt the pain that I was experiencing. And that's the only thing that gave me strength throughout that dark, painful time. It ended up being a kidney stone. Oh. And for those who know, kidney stones are so painful. And through that time, that's the only thing that got me through. So when I talk to clients and during therapy, and I'm sure this is the same for you, for people to see how the connection with the higher power can actually help when we're feeling in the darkest place. What are your thoughts about that?
First of all, it's amazing. Thank you for sharing that story. It's obviously, these huge pivotal moments of our lives that just kind of open up this whole, it's like the hitting rock bottom. It's like, something has to be different than the way I thought it was until now, because life can't go on this way. And for some folks, therapy is that moment, actually. And they come to therapy at that moment, and the therapist's role is to help them connect to that, not higher power in the sense of God, but to first of all, to be that person with them in their dark moments. It's not always to fix, it's not always to heal, it's not always to even guide, it's just really to sit with someone. And then through that connection, through the therapist-client connection, to give the client a taste of there's something out here that can hold me. There's a universe that can hold me. There's a higher power that can hold me. There's a community that can hold me. There are ideas. There are people that can hold me, and I'm not alone. And I think that's such a huge part of therapy, and sometimes an overlooked part of therapy as well.
Yeah.
So that was really it's amazing that you were able to experience that, and then the ability to give and use that to say I'm going to do something beyond myself is beautiful.
One of the pop words we hear now is being authenticity. What are your thoughts about authenticity, and how does spirituality help one develop their authentic self?
So a lot of folks, also touches on religious trauma a little bit, think we're here to fulfill our potential. You'll hear sometimes a teacher or a parent, will tell the parent, child has a lot of potential. That's never the positive thing, kid has a lot of potential. Okay. So I believe, and I got this from some of my teachers, that we're not here to fulfill our potential. We're here to go way beyond that potential. And that's kind of what happened to you in that moment in the hospital. It's like, here's what I'm doing till now, but I need to do something else. I need to do something bigger. And when we start to tap into that going beyond ourselves, that's when we start to tap into our authentic self. So this figuring out who we are, what we're about. And it's another question I'll often ask clients, either in intake or early on, is like, what's your mission statement? And most of them will say, no one ever asked me that before. Like, what are you doing here? Why are you here? Not because, do you follow the rules, or are you a good boy or a good girl, or do you, are you going to get some Christmas presents from Santa because you behaved? But why are you here? What are you doing to justify your existence? Now, for some people, that's too heavy, and I won't necessarily ask them that. But for folks who are a little bit more established, have that grounding, have a sense of foundation, and are okay, I'll ask them that. And again, many people don't have an answer. And that's where the work begins. It's like you have an authentic self, but we don't know who that is or what that's about. And when we start to first meet ourselves in the mirror and then meet others in that broad, expansive light, we start to meet an authentic self that we may not recognize. And it's scary for some people.
Why do you think some people don't have the answer?
Well, it could go one of two ways. For folks who grew up in the religious environment, I'm speaking for myself and people I know and people I've worked with, we're not over that question because there's a set of rules. So you don't have to think about it. Here's what you're here to do. You have to wake up every day. You have to wash your hands a certain way. You have to pray a certain way. You have to study a certain way. You have to do business a certain way. You have to talk to other people a certain way. You have to eat these foods, don't eat these foods, observe these laws on the Sabbath, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm doing everything I'm supposed to do. I'm doing everything in the user manual. Mm-hmm. I don't need anything else. And for folks who grew up without that or rebelled against it, it's like, well, I don't want the manual. I can figure this out myself. So let me just do whatever I want. But whatever I want is not what we're here to do either, because there has to be some configuration of what that is. I always think of this metaphor of like let's say you save up a lot of money to buy a Lamborghini or some, I don't know, fancy car, and you save up for a couple of years, you buy your Lamborghini. The problem is now you're broke because you bought a Lamborghini. So you realize you need an oil change, but you can't afford the oil for the Lamborghini because it's expensive. So you go to the store, you see some Coca-Cola or like some ShopRite brand cola, it's even cheaper. You're like, all right, this is a black liquid. I don't know what's in it. It's a bunch of chemicals anyway. No offense to the folks at Coca-Cola. And I'm going to pour it in the oil tank. So you do this, and your neighbor is watching. He says, "Hey, bro, what's going on?" And you say, "Mind your own business. It's my car." And this goes on for a few weeks or a few months, and your car breaks down. And you call the people at Lamborghini and you say, "Hey, the car that you sold me doesn't work." They say, "We're so sorry, sir." We come down. They come down to look at it, and everything looks good on the outside. All of a sudden they open the oil tank and they say, "Hey, what is this?" And you say, "It's Coca-Cola." And they say, "Well, you need oil, a special oil actually, to run the Lamborghini because this Coca-Cola is going to kill the engine." And you say, "Excuse me, it's my car, not your car. I didn't ask your opinion." So that's a moment that a lot of us need to face in our lives. What are we doing that's where there's some sort of manufacturer? Now, whether you believe in God creating you or the universe or coming by accident, there's some sort of manual. There's something. There's a set of rules to follow. There's a set of put it this way, ideal conditions. And when we start to insert our own logic too much into that system and override the system, that's how we know better, then we're going to break down. And our cars are not going to run on Coca-Cola. So literally, Coca-Cola, drinking too much Coke is not good for us. But in a deeper, in a spiritual or even a materialistic sense, when we start to go against the grain, things start to break down.
So for a person who's religious, then it helps them because it's almost like they have a set of rules that they have to live by. And for a person who's not religious, what are your thoughts?
So here's the story, and it's confusing, but I was actually discussing this with someone yesterday. In Judaism, we don't believe in God. God is a Western concept. It doesn't come from Judaism. It's an English word. Judaism believes in a power called Hashem and Elohim, and there's many names for God, for Hashem. And the two main names we use is Hashem, which is a 4-letter name, which we don't pronounce the actual name. Hashem literally means the name. That's Yud Kei Vav Kei, or Yud Hey Vav Hey in the Hebrew. And then it's Elohim, which is the name of God that we use to represent His manifestation in the physical world. Sunrise is 6 o'clock, sunset is 6 p.m. Today's Sunday, tomorrow's Monday. And the name of Hashem is an infinite power. God always was, is, and will be, and anything can happen at any time. And we live in a world of chaos because the two names are not together. And this is every person in their own life. So when the name of Hashem is to manifest in a person's life, it could be beautiful and it's limitless, but it's chaotic. So I could decide that today I want it to be Rosh Hashanah, even though it was yesterday on the calendar, because God is infinite, and I could do it, and He could do anything He wants, and I'm an aspect of that, so I could tap into that anytime. What's yours is mine, because God is everywhere. So I could take your things, or you can't have anything, or it creates these a very blurring of the boundaries. Whereas again, the name Elohim is the boundaries. So what is every day I wake up exactly this time, every night I go to sleep at exactly this time. But what happens then when there's things that have to happen that are out of the ordinary? What happens when your best friend's getting married, or when you have to get married, or your daughter's getting married, and you're like, no, I need to go to sleep at 9 o'clock. These are the rules. Because if I don't go to sleep at 9 o'clock, my car's going to stop working. The guy told me at Lamborghini, if I don't put this in the tank, it's going to stop working. So how do I combine these two energies in the world, and how do I combine these two energies in the world and make the spiritual, turn the mundane into spiritual, and make the spiritual an active practice that's sustainable? And so whether or not you believe in God, or whether you believe in Lamborghinis, you believe in anything, how do we take these two energies and put them together? And most of us end up leaning too much to one side. It's either we lean on the side of infiniteness, and there's no boundaries, or we live a very over-boundary life, and it's like it's very hard for me to go out of the boundaries.
So talking about flexibility, for us to be more flexible. Well, one of the most important areas for us to talk about is our why. Why do we do what we do? Who are we as people? What drives us? Now that we learned that spirituality is kind of the foundation of all of this, it's really our why. What are the steps for someone to now become more spiritual and kind of connect with their inner self? what would someone have to start doing to become more connected with their inner self? Somebody who practices this as a therapist, something that you give off to your clients. So for those who are listening here today, what would be some of suggestions or some guidance you can share?
It's obviously everyone has their own path, but I guess the first thing is curiosity. It's like, am I into things? Am I curious about the world? Am I curious about why I'm here? For those folks, it's probably easier because they're already on that path. And for those who aren't looking, the curiosity of like what it is that I'm scared of. Usually there's a fear. Am I afraid of tapping into an energy that I can't experience? That's one of the definitions of anxiety. It's like I'm afraid of the unknown. So if this is my 4 cubits that I'm used to, and my 4 square feet that I exist in, and what's out there is scary, why would I include that in my life? Am I really missing something? What am I missing in my life? I have everything I need. I have a decent salary. I have a decent home. I live in a safe neighborhood. I have a car. Yada yada yada. What's my need to start looking for something that may require me to do things that I don't fully understand? And that's a hard sell.
That's an excellent point.
It's a very hard sell because it's like, you're right. Usually for those people though, there's like the question of like, if you had to repeat every single day of your life exactly the way it was today, would you want to? Usually get a blank stare or say, no, take me out of here now. And so why is that? Why, if your life is so figured out and so perfect, why don't you want to do the exact same thing for the next 50 years? Because if I walk a few steps out of the box, it's like the earth is flat. I'm going to fall off. Versus like, there's something out there that I could really experience that I'm just afraid of. And it goes back to, like I said before, the science fiction. It's like, if I start believing in science fiction, then maybe there's monsters in my closet, and maybe there's UFOs, and maybe there's all these crazy things, or maybe there's nothing crazy out there, but it's just an internal experience that I'm afraid of having. Mm-hmm. Which is why, again, going back to the religious aspect of it, a lot of people come to, let's say, they have a religious awakening and they want to find God, and they go to synagogue and they don't find God in the synagogue. They just find a lot of rituals and people mumbling a bunch of words in a prayer book because the people have taken the religious experience out of the religious practice. And again, the merging of the experience and the practice is tricky and fundamental, though, for having success in this area.
When you say they're looking for God, what void do you feel like they're hoping to fill?
Again, going back to this existential feeling of emptiness or not having a purpose or every day's the same. Everything's okay, but every day's the same. And, I get this a lot. Everything's okay, but everything's the same. And I don't really, there's no connecting, there's no thread, there's no mission statement. So where would I look for that? So if I grew up with a religious practice, whether it's in the church, or I can only speak for the synagogue because that's the way I grew up, or any other house of worship, and I go look for it and it's just ritual and nothing happens. If nothing changes, if I go to the service at 7 and I leave at 8 and nothing happens to me, what did I just do for an hour? Mm. But if too many things are happening, it's going to blow the system.
Yeah.
So how do I find the esoteric within the mundane? How do I blow my mind over shampoo?
Mm-hmm. I heard a quote: "If nothing changes, nothing changes."
That's it.
So this is about digging deep and living your higher self. But I like what you said about potential, because we hear this all the time in school. We're going to help your child, and they write it on report cards, we're going to help your child reach their highest potential. And who are we to say what their highest potential is? There is a greater...
It's very limiting.
It's very limiting. Very interesting perspective. I've never heard it that way. Uh-huh. So... we want to be able to continue exploring who we are and what our beliefs are and our values. Sometimes, especially for people who were raised in unhealthy, unstable homes, sometimes their beliefs or values, for lack of a better word, I'll use, let's say, corrupt, right? How does one start to shift that if they had a difficult childhood, a difficult upbringing, and they have certain beliefs just from observation, just from things they see their parents do or their surroundings, their relatives, and the way this family system ran, and now they want something different?
Well, first I want to validate that it's very difficult, and for someone who grew up being hurt in the name of religion. It's a daunting task, and it's definitely an uphill battle. Just to put that out there. I think it's important not to confuse, which is difficult, not to confuse the messenger with the message. And if someone comes to you and says something negative in the name of God, in the name of religion, that's not our God. It's not the Jewish God. That's not any God of any religion I know. That's not God. That's not Hashem. It's for sure not Hashem. It might be God. It's not Hashem. If anyone who puts anyone down and says, we don't pray like that. We don't look like that. We don't make our hair like that. We don't polish our nails like that. We don't wear those clothes. God is, if we believe in an infinite God, He's not limited to any of those things, and He can be found anywhere at any time, in any place. That being said, again, going back to this paradoxical kind of dialectical view, it's like, yet God does supposedly, not supposedly, but what we believe gives us a set of rules that make it easier to find them and align with His values. Mm-hmm. And let's talk about prayer for a second, because that's important piece. Again, Jews don't pray. Prayer comes from a French word that means to beg. Jews don't believe in prayer. We do what's called teila. By the way, a lot of sessions we do this. I do some for the folks who want it. Just translating the words, because there's a lot of corruption in translation, which just already dispels half the darkness, because Jews don't pray.
I love this. This is such important information.
So just for everyone who's listening, Jews don't pray. We are mitpalel. We are mispalel. Or we daven, which is an interesting word in Yiddish. We'll come back to that maybe later. So tefillah, the first time, and if you want to know what a word means, you look the first time in the Torah. And the first time, though, that the root of that word, the shoresh of that word comes up, the word tefillah, is palel. And Jacob, Yaakov Avinu, Jacob, is separated from his son Joseph for 17 years. And they have this very emotional reunion. And then shortly thereafter, Joseph comes to Jacob, his father, with his two sons, Ephraim and Manasseh. And Jacob says to Joseph, "Re'ei panecha lo palalta." I never imagined I would see this scene. So tefillah in Jewish practice comes from, it's a meditative practice. It's an act of using the imagination, tuning into the higher faculties of imagination, of contemplation, really meditation. The way I can't say exactly the way it's used in the East, but closer to the way it's used in the East, and less so the way it's used in the church. But again, this is been lost over generations, and there's books you could read about this. Ari Kaplan writes about this, amongst others. You get to sort of to realign what prayer is, or tefillah. So I got distracted by tefillah. But how do we get into this?
We were talking about how prayer is not tefillah. Right. Tefillah is something else. But I'm curious to know, how would one tefillah is a Hebrew word, no? Mm-hmm. So how would one translate tefillah into an English word?
So it's a reflexive verb. My Hebrew grammar is not great, but we are mitpalel. We are commanded to hitpalel. So it's a reflexive. It's something that we do. We contemplate. We use contemplation. So Rav Nachman Abrasov teaches a lot about something called his bodedus, mm-hmm. which is translated as I don't know how it's translated, but the way my teacher translates it is as holy aloneness. And we use this time to be alone with our thoughts, which then we can connect to our higher power. So when we meditate, when we focus on mind, and the power of meditation is not to have a single focus, but really to bring the thoughts back, which means over the course of the day, whatever we're doing, we could be mindful and meditate through that. So whether it's work, whether it's driving, whether it's talking to other people, whether it's eating a bagel, we could use all those things as a way of coming back. And we could be mitpalel throughout the day when we get in tune with that energy.
You said it was a holy aloneness?
That's what I heard. I don't know.
Wow. It's correct me if I'm wrong, but it's being alone with yourself in like a holy atmosphere. And from the people who I spoke with, it's a very powerful type of experience. I know for many, including myself, especially in the beginning, it's like, it's okay, I did it for 1 minute. I spoke to a higher power. I spoke to, I should say, Hashem, right? For a minute. Okay, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 5 minutes. And then what? So it does get a bit tricky for some, especially in the beginning phase.
It's very scary.
But it is very scary. Tell me a little bit about that.
Well, it's scary to be alone with our thoughts. And this is why the practice of mindfulness is so powerful and also so scary for some. I do a lot of DBT work, and what the foundation of DBT is actually mindfulness. And now I just say there's a shortcut that they didn't have 20 years ago. There's a shortcut to mindfulness. Turn off your device for an hour. Turn off all devices for an hour. and you're already 3/4 of the way there. Because there's a lot less distraction. It's like, I got to check and look. No, you don't have to check and look. You have to check and look over here. Check the emails, get the download. And when we're busy downloading from the external world, we're missing the downloads that are coming in the internal world. And we lose touch with our own wise mind, as DBT calls it. Our Sutra Atman in the East, our Chelek Elokim in the Jewish tradition. And when we turn off the distractions and we practice being the power of holy aloneness, of what Chabad calls hitbonenut, which is contemplation, then we start to download on our own channel, on our own frequency, and then we could use it for ourselves, and then harness our own power into the world, and get in touch with our mission statement.
So a few things. Number one, what would be the benefits for doing the alone with holiness? I don't know if I'm saying it correctly, right?
However you say it.
So what would be the benefits of that in our growth as humans? That's number one. And number two, it's a two-part question. Number two is, how does one become better with doing it? Because you talked about the scary part of it, right? What will come up, the anxiety of it, the fear of the unknown, feeling, the fears of the feelings coming up for you, not knowing which feelings and how you're going to handle them. So what benefits and how does one get better at it?
So we can take a 2-second detour. Just holy is also a misunderstood word. The word kedusha in Hebrew, which we translate as holy, also gets misconstrued and kind of twisted sometimes. So the way one of my teachers, Rabbi David Aaron, translates it is holy with a W, to be complete. So when we're whole in mind, body, and spirit, which again is a mindfulness practice, when we're tuned in, when our thoughts match our speech and our actions then match our thoughts, then we're in a state of holiness. We're in a state of completion. So back to your question, which is what do we do? I like DBT for that reason, because there's a recipe. Start slow, start simple. A minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes. Don't worry so much about the higher power at the beginning, because that could be too much for some. And just like, how do I tune in to the mundane? Always start with the external. What's in front of me? Observe it. In DBT, it's called observe and describe. Take in the room. I take in the sensory inputs. I'm noticing there's a person, there's a wall, there's lights, there's all this beautiful paraphernalia here. Then I start to describe it. What is this? This is a microphone. I could, get more into the definitions of what's around me in the mundane world. And then I could do it internally. What am I thinking? What's going on in my head? Am I feeling things? Am I thinking things? Is my mind blank? Are these thoughts? Are these feelings? What are the thoughts? Labeling, this is very important for anxiety. When I say I can't do this, this is too much, labeling that as a thought. I have a thought that I can't do this. I have a thought that this is too much. Because I can't do this is not a fact, a tangible fact. It might be very difficult. I cannot right now necessarily go skydiving. It would be very difficult for me to go skydiving right now. It would probably take me a few hours to get to the closest skydiving place. But rephrasing, even these little phrases, and this again goes into cognitive psychology, just like, how do I reframe? This would be challenging. This is difficult for me. I have a hard time doing this. Slowly, and then the more we tune in, the more we refine those thoughts, the easier it is to kind of come in touch with like our judgmental thoughts. This is stupid. I don't like this. I don't like him. I don't like her. I don't like this. I don't like these people. What are those thoughts? There's a lot of black and white thinking, a lot of this, either or thinking. It's like, how do I start seeing gray area or the colors? Mm-hmm. How do I start to take things apart and say like, okay, I have a hard time. I don't really understand this. I'm curious about this. I don't know what this is about. I want to learn more about this. That's very scary. How do I then, okay, now I'm scared of this. What am I scared of? Yeah. Am I scared of other people? Am I scared of other practices? Or am I just unknown? Are they just unknown to me?
So you're a therapist who specializes in CBT and DBT. These are two specific modalities, techniques used with helping people change behavior, negative behavior that they don't want to deal with anymore. So can you, for those who are new to the mental health journey and are not familiar with what CBT is or DBT is, can you share a little bit about those techniques and how you use them with clients and how they're helpful for our thinking patterns? So
I guess to go in the reverse order, the T is therapy, so we'll leave that to the other therapist. The B is behavior therapy, so we're very much concerned in the day-to-day living. Are we living as effectively as possible in line with who we want to be? in line with our goals, our values. That's a little bit from ACT as well. But just are we living a life that's functional? Are our relationships the way we want them to be? Is our work the way we want it to be? Is our schoolwork the way we want it to be? Are all my habits the way I want my habits to be, so to speak? So that's the B in the behavioral therapy. And then the C in cognitive therapy has a lot to do with the thoughts. What are we thinking? Cognitive therapy speaks a lot of automatic thoughts. So what's the first thought that hits me when I walk into a new place, a new environment? Am I judgmental? Am I scared? Am I happy? Am I overwhelmed? Like what is that? And where does that come from? And how do we sort of untangle that and understand that better? And then try to rewire the connections that aren't serving us. If every time I meet someone, I think they're out to get me, and I go to therapy and say, hey, I start a new job and they all hate me and it's no good. The boss doesn't like me and they'll talk about me. It's like, okay, it's obviously important to understand the reality of like what's actually happening. But at the same time, it's like, what are you thinking that's sort of making that your reality, and how can we reframe? Which goes in DBT, there's this idea called non-judgmental, where we kind of take thoughts apart and just say, this is not either or, there's a lot going on here, and kind of look at this in a broad perspective. And the D in DBT stands for dialectics. Dialectics is a form of paradox of opposites. How do I balance opposites? How do I believe in God and believe in God was so merciful when the Holocaust happened? How do I be a good person when there's people who are out to get me, or there's people who are out to get other people? How do I pay taxes when there's things the government does I don't like? And there's a million things that we go through a day where we have to balance these kind of dialectics. And the more expansive our view gets, the easier these things become. They don't necessarily resolve fully, but they get a little easier.
Radical acceptance. Being able to kind of sit there and take it, and building resilience, especially for somebody, which we talked about before, someone who didn't come up from a healthy background, healthy upbringing, healthy childhood, and they had so much negative labeling. And they kind of their brain created that story of who they are. So, for example, if they were a person who was constantly bullied and they felt like they are not good enough as a child, let's say, and as they became an adult and they have to give a presentation at work, they feel everyone will laugh at me because growing up, they were bullied. So that was the label that they kind of label themselves, saying, I am not good enough because everyone laughs at me. And now a 30, 40-year-old adult has a hard time giving a presentation at work. It goes back to rewiring their brain. And this is what you do, what many therapists do, being able to help people rewire that and say, you don't have to live in so much pain just because you were raised a certain way for years and years and years. We can change that. I get this question asked all the time when I do an intake, or when a new client calls and says, do you really believe I can change? Or I've been doing this for years and years. Do you really believe this can change? And I say, absolutely, I do believe. And if it wouldn't be the case, I would be doing exactly. I wouldn't be doing my job. And my job is to be able to see a person's journey through that. And so many people don't even know I was going to say potential, but now I'm going to hesitate to use that word. What do I use instead? So
the treasure that's buried there, because people want to change because they recognize that, and this is, again, comes as a very Kabbalistic concept, but people know that this, what they're doing is not who they are. And this is kind of all of us, the story in Judaism and in other traditions, it's the similar versions, what's called the shattering of the vessels. Mm-hmm. So we believe that it's brought down in the books of the Kabbalistic text, that there was this sort of perfect state of being, and then there was a shattering, a brokenness, and then we kind of woke up in this mess of chaos. And the reason we believe we could fix, or we could make amends, is because we know that this is not who we are, and there's something that we could connect to that's outside at one time outside of ourselves, but also within, and we connect that piece inside to that surrounding light. There's this great fixing that goes on, and internally, and then that spreads to others.
Hudi, this is some good stuff over here. This is some good stuff. So
it's not mine. It's not my material.
For one who wants to know what truly matters to them, what do they stand for, and what is something they would never compromise. That is really the essence of spirituality. A lot of the times, for people who are listening to this podcast now, spirituality is not to be confused with religion, although there's a lot of the times they intertwine and kind of mesh together. But it's really doing that inner work, asking yourself these questions to be able to formulate who you are as a person. Now, for those who have regrets from the past, how can spirituality help them sit with the pain, but also build a better future for themselves?
It's a great question. Comes up all the time, and also appropriate to, again, the time of year we're in today. The yesterday was Rosh Hashanah, Jewish New Year. And a week from today, from earlier today, is Yom Kippur, the day of at-one-ment in the Jewish calendar. Atonement, at-one-ment, being at one with yourself, goes back to the holiness thing. And these are 10 days. These are called Aseres Yemei Tshuva, the 10 days of repentance, which is, again, not the correct translation. Teshuvah means to return, the 10 days of returning. So what are we returning to? Which goes back to what we talked about a few minutes ago. We're returning to who we are. We're returning to our essence, to our, if you believe in it, the godly essence, but at least the essence of humanity that's within us and the shared humanity that we all have. Because even if you don't believe in God, most people believe that we all come from some sort of ancestor that, contained human beings, the initial ancestor. So that internal connection, we're returning to that sense. So when, again, the process of returning to who we are, our essence, our purpose, connects us to then the world, to the universe, to nature, and to other people. So using that, so a mistake is a challenge. A mistake is a building block to get back there somehow. So I'll share a thought from the Hasidic masters, one of my favorites, Naftali of Ropshitz, who lived in the early 1800s, late 1700s, in Poland. And I once got accused of being sounding like I came from the shtetl. It was one of the best compliments I ever got. So Naftali of Ropshitz teaches us that what do they say in heaven when a person commits a so-called transgression? If a person does something against the Torah, against Jewish law, in heaven they don't say anything bad. There's nothing negative in heaven. Everything's positive. Everything has a message. So if someone does a mistake, if someone creates a quote-unquote transgression, in heaven they say this person is building a new path to come back. This person is building a new pathway to serve God, because the way he's going to come back is going to be different than anyone else, because his detour took him away that no one else went. And the tshuva is when we get in touch with that. The return is getting in touch with who we are. And therapy is a lot of that. Uncovering the essence, peeling away the layers of the onion, coming back to the essence of who we are, who we want to be, and what we want to manifest in the world.
As you're speaking, there's a feeling that comes up for me. And the feeling is, you're okay. And so much love for humanity. To see it, to hear, you should be a therapist,
I once had, this is off topic. This is I once was in a session, it was a video session, it was a number of years ago. It was right at the beginning of COVID, and I was kind of still all confused. And the client was talking, and I didn't think I have proper Wi-Fi. I was doing the session on the phone. It's like a very narrow screen. I'm just like, the fellow was talking, and I was like, this person should really have a therapist. This person should really have a therapist. And then 5 minutes, I'm like, oh. So I'll work on it. I'm working on it. Yeah,
you're doing a great job, because in therapy, of course, we want to teach or to guide our clients and give them the tools, but also it's that human connection, being able for our clients to see hey, someone here cares for you, and you're not on this journey alone. And as you're speaking about this and spirituality and the connection with religion and you as a therapist, and to kind of put that all together, I just felt so much love and acceptance. And I feel like that's really what people want. People want to know that you're okay and you'll be okay. There's light at the end of the tunnel. And if you made a mistake, you'll figure this out. It comes with practice. And even if you have some regrets from the past, that's a stepping stone to your life that you'll have in the future. And if you were there talking about mindfulness, if you were in that situation, that's the exact situation you needed to be. So this way you can be your higher self.
And often it's this in therapy we would call it depression, or these parts or these voices that are coming and dragging us down. But you did this, you made this mistake. And it's true, we do need to make amends. many times. But sometimes the biggest amendment we could make is by making the next step work. And this is whether it's DBT or any other modality. It's like, okay, you woke up at 3:00. It sucks. Terrible. Okay, what are you going to do from 3:00 till you go to sleep? And the idea of like, oh, but it's 3. Okay, so what? And turning these like what ifs into the so whats. It's like, okay, so what? So this happened. Unfortunately, I'm so sad. I'm so sorry. And again, it's different when we're doing it to ourselves versus things that have happened from other people. And maybe we'll say that for another time. But each of us in our own day, how do we make every mistake, so to speak, a stepping stone? And it's a challenge. It's not necessarily, nothing's a death sentence.
It's like getting out of that all or nothing thinking. So if I woke up at 3:00, so that's it. My whole day is ruined. So I'd rather watch TV for the rest of the day because it's done. But what you're saying is, no, if that happened, moving forward, let's be productive if we can for this time being. Let's not dwell too much or ruminate on the past, but allow yourself to move forward from it. And I think that's, especially for people who are perfectionists, that all or nothing thinking, it's so difficult. I'll be honest, even for me, I'm a recovering perfectionist, and I try very hard to get out of that mindset. It has to be completely perfect or it's not good at all. So that's something I'm working on.
We're all working on it. I mean, easier said than done. Just to go back to what you said, I think that is a message of believing in yourself, believing in ourselves, which often gets, especially with trauma, gets stepped on over and over again. And this belief in self is often the prerequisite to any of this work. Because even if I could recognize that I have quote-unquote, cognitive distortions, it's not a term I love so much, but these quote-unquote cognitive distortions, if I don't believe in my own power, if I don't believe in my own self, then, or that I have a self even, then a lot of this goes out the window.
Why don't you like those words so much?
Because everything has a purpose. So if we're thinking a certain way, maybe there's a reason. And this goes back to like the big picture, where it's like, again, Rabbi Nachman talks about like finding the nekudos tovos, the good points in everything. So if I have a quote unquote negative thought or cognitive distortion, maybe there's a way I could use that thought itself as a stepping stool, and not necessarily even try to switch it so much.
Mm-hmm. There was one year where I really wanted to, when I was in my undergrad, and I saw my professors, it was a dream of mine to be one day a professor. And I think you're teaching now as well.
Teaching now, one course, yeah.
Yeah, so when I graduated, that was one of my goals, to become a professor. And the first class they gave me to teach was a policy class, and it was definitely not, the look on your face says it all. It was definitely a class I did not want to teach. But I learned something from that class, which was the foundation of a policy, right? Why is a policy created? A policy is only created when there's a problem. If there's no problem, why would there be a policy that's created, right? So if you think about it for a moment, this cognitive distortion can also be, let's call it, the problem, right, for the time being. And once you have that problem, you think like, hey, I need help. This is not okay. You go seek therapy. You dig deep, do the inner work, and then you become this, this version of yourself 2.0 where you're like, wow, I didn't even know that I had so much strength. Now, if I wouldn't have this, let's call it a distortion, I would have never been here. What are your thoughts?
I like it a lot. It's interesting. There's this goes back to what I was going to say a minute ago, but I practice yoga, and one of the things that teachers talk about a lot is our third nature. So we have our first nature, which is very primal, babies, baby animals, baby humans, very primal behaviors. Then the second nature, what we learn to do, what language we learn, how we learn to interact with others, the way we're raised, the way we interact with the world, the resources that are available to us, how we make use of those resources, what work we do. And then there's this third nature, which when we take the primal instincts and our second nature, how we learn to do, and we join it together. So we have a right hand and a left hand, and we take it together, and we have a third hand, we have a third eye, right? And then we harness that power of our third nature, which becomes really our 1.0. It comes back to our 1.0. It's like this becomes who we are, and it's very powerful. It's like when someone's a native speaker of a certain language, or even better, a native speaker of two languages, and they start to intertwine those languages, and they have a new language. They have, some people speak, Russian English, or Yiddish in English, or Hebrew in English, or any two languages really. and then they learn a dialect that's unique to them or maybe their family and that's great, and that's how things are created. So it's taking these ideas, these quote unquote mistakes, and the power of where they come from, and the ideas behind them, and saying, okay, how do I harness this for good, so to speak, or for functionality.
As you're speaking, I see this is not just a 9 to 5 for you. This is like who you are as a human. So, let's say a 9-year-old Hudi or 15-year-old Hudi is this something you always envisioned yourself doing? How did this all start?
So, funnily enough, I found I pulled out an old tractate of the Talmud, a Gemara from when I was in 10th grade. So it was 2001, 2002, because I was in 10th grade during 9/11. And it was 2000. So this is 22 years ago. And I found a page of quotes in the back from Ecclesiastes, the book of Koheles. Apparently I had this obsession. I remember when it started, actually. It was the time of the year we Ecclesiastes, which is actually on Sukkot in 2 weeks. And I just fell in love with these ideas of like the vanity of vanities, all is vain, and like there's a time and a season for everything. A dead dog is a live dog is better than a dead lion. There's all these fantastic. All the rivers flow to the sea. At the sea is not full. All these like quotes that for like a 15-year-old I thought were very interesting to like, kind of, be interested in. And I recognized, I guess, whatever was going on was starting to cook then. There was like this kind of interest in like, I guess the mission statements. Like, what are we doing? Like, this is not. We didn't come here for high school. Like, so like what's going on? And then channeling it into this work, there was a time I was going to do education, go into education, but I really feel more comfortable in the one-on-one interaction than in front of groups of people and things like that. And figuring out a way to make these changes for myself, hopefully, I'm still working on it, and then we're human becomings, not human beings. And then, helping others do the same, and then let them do the work in their own environments.
I feel like I should have brought a notepad with me and write down all of these one-liners and put it on a T-shirt because
it's recorded. It's okay. Yeah,
we're human becomings, not human beings.
Because if you're a human being, this is the Jewish source for this is we say it every day. Yismach leiv mevakshei Hashem. Happy of heart is he who searches for God. Again, I'm accused God here as a higher power, whatever it is. But happy is he who searches for God. So the obvious question is, which is not so obvious unless you think about it, is why don't we say happy is he who found God? If the search, and the answer is happy is he who's looking, not happy is he who thinks they found it. The joyous of the heart is the one who's looking. So there's this intense longing and searching for something, and as long as you're on the path of the seeker, you have joy. It's when you think you find something that you kind of that's when it's over.
To switch that into therapy language, mental health is not a destination, it's a journey, right? So it's about, a lot of times people have this idea of, if I only get here, I will be happy. If I get here, I will be successful. But in reality, it's the journey of it all is what's exciting. It's what makes us. And you know what? Till our last day on this earth is where we're going to continue to explore. I mean, the last day of us being on this earth is the last day of us continuing to grow, because we never stop growing. One of my, someone close to me who went back to school, and the student tells them, why are you going back to school? You already have a degree. You don't have to go back to school. And they said, no, I'm learning it, because as we develop, we're constantly learning of the ways of the world, and it's constantly shifting and changing.
So two thoughts on that. One is that I just read this idea yesterday. It blew me away. It was a beautiful idea. Again, it's borrowing from the Jewish tradition, but in our prayers every day, we say once or twice a day or sometimes more, we say a few sentences that we're told that the angels say. And one of them is, Baruch Kivod Hashem Mkomo, blessed is Hashem is the source of blessing from his place. And if you take the first letter, in Hebrew it's called the Rosh Tevos, which is a very powerful way of looking at words and the inner essence of the words. One of the ways we look at the inner essence, Baruch Kivod Hashem Komo spells the word Bochim, which means crying. So the angels, blew me away. The angels are crying because the angels, we believe, don't move. They're crying because there's limits. They might be angels, they might be up there, but they can't move. They can't change. Mm-hmm. And they're so to speak jealous. They're sad that they can't change like us. So the angels themselves cry because they can't change. So that as long as we're changing, as long as we're shifting, we're okay.
Wow, beautifully said. So, sometimes in life it's helpful to have a mentor, right? We talk about higher power, but also someone we can look up to, someone who can kind of guide us. So for some, it can be a therapist, for some, it can be a rabbi, for some, it can be a really good friend, right? What are your thoughts about having a mentor and using that as a tool to be able to help us get to where we want to be?
So this has gotten me into trouble for a long time. For I think good trouble. Because it says in the Ethics of the Fathers and the Jewish Proverbs, it's a Jewish proverb that says, "Who is wise? He who learns from everybody." So Ezeu Chacham Alomen Mikol Adam, someone who has to learn from everybody. So that means from the folks on the street to the professors and universities, to the rabbis, to the great rabbis, to the small rabbis, to friends, to enemies, and everyone in between. There's no distinction. Mikol Adam, it says. It doesn't say from most people. It says from everybody. So that means every single person has something to teach us, all times. So walking with that humility and that sense of shared human experience opens us up to the world. Now, the issue is it's very easy to have teachers, not so easy, but it's easier to have teachers from a book, to read a book and follow a certain path, or to go to school or to yeshiva and learn a certain and have a teacher and ask them questions. What's more challenging is how to walk the world. How do we walk in the streets of the world? How do we have this kind of learning experience from everybody? I'm still working on it. I have supervision. I have twice monthly supervision with a supervisor, a DBT supervisor. I have peer supervision. We meet also about twice a month. I speak to colleagues other times, to get ideas of them. And other mentors, different parts of my life, different friends I talk to about different things, family members, asking opinions and knowing where other people's opinions come from, understanding where our own biases come from. Sometimes we have to ask ourselves. There's a Yiddish saying, my Yiddish is very poor, unfortunately, but basically it's like if you're not sure what to do and you're stuck, ask someone smart, ask a wise person, a chacham, a righteous person. But if there's no wise person around you, ask the biggest fool and do the opposite. So sometimes that's been the teacher. It's like, okay, I see this person's doing this thing. I'm going to do the opposite of what that person's doing. I'm not going to tell them that because that's insulting. But I don't want to go there. So I'm gonna say, okay, what decision led him there? I want to make the opposite decision or a different decision because that's not a path I want to go down. And sometimes it's the opposite, saying like, oh wow, this person has something. Like what are they doing? What energy are they cultivating in the world? What are they picking up that I want some of? Maybe not all of it, but at least I want to borrow from that so I could have new experiences. And I think my biggest teacher has been the experiences. Yeah. Like, going places, talking to people, listening to the stories I have to tell, and you never know where it's going to land.
Going back to spirituality, that's the essence of spirituality. Connecting to the universe, connecting to the world. You can really learn from every interaction you have what to do and what not to do. So at this point, we have to kind of bring it back into therapy because one of the fundamentals that we learn in school is meet the client where they're at, right? Empathy. All right, come on, tell me. I feel like you have something to share.
Don't meet the client where they're at. Take them to where they need to go.
Ooh.
You can also meet them where they're at because if you don't meet them at the station, you're not going to pick them up. Right. So but yes, meet them where they're at. But again, don't get stuck there.
Don't get stuck there.
Yeah, don't let the bus break down and just stay at the bus stop.
Right. So and with saying that, we definitely as therapists we want to respect our clients, their history, their background, their beliefs, and their values. So I want to now therapeutically, I want to ask you a couple of questions. How you mesh the two, especially if a client may not be ready for hearing the word, spirituality, even though I very much believe, and this is my belief, that spirituality is really the essence of who we are as humans, and it's such important work. Now, because of, unfortunately, religious trauma, and a lot of the time spirituality is meshed with religion and spirituality are meshed together. So that's why even the word spirituality can freak some people out. So here are my questions. You ready? I wrote them down because I don't want to make a mistake. Here we go. How does spirituality and religion influence your therapeutic practice? Would you say that's your main focus? And how do you use that with clients?
How long have we been talking? 45 minutes, an hour?
Yeah.
So I think that's how. I think that I think it's part of my identity, and clients know it, even if I'm not saying it. They recognize that that's there. The book's on the shelf. But I like to do what's called, what I sort of came up with this a while ago, cognitive soul therapy. So it's helpful to have the background in, quote unquote, again, another term that I have a hard time with, but let's use it for evidence-based practice. What's the protocol? Someone's coming, they have panic attacks. They don't want to hear about God. There's none of this. It's like, okay, how do we deal with this? And then there's no direct, or even, I mean, it's always indirect, but there's no direct spirituality, there's no religion, there's none of this. It's really like, what does the manual say? So go back, whenever therapy is not working, I go back to the manual. Say, okay, what are we missing here from the DBT protocols, from the CBT protocols, from the ACT protocols, from whatever modality we're following, like goes back to the Lamborghini example. Like what are we putting in the tanks? What is the therapeutic alliance poor? Is the client not understanding? Is the therapist not understanding the problem? How do we go back to the basics, go back to the treatment plan, go back to the presenting problem? And almost always that works, because we're just redefining what's happening and we're going back to sort of square one. So I find that that's very helpful. And for the clients who are more concrete or just need immediate alleviation or help, going back to the basics is always very helpful.
Being that I'm in this room here right now with you together, I definitely maybe get a glimpse of what your clients feel, the acceptance and just the kind of warm, welcoming type of feeling. But for someone who's not here in this room and just listening, what if their spiritual/religious beliefs are different than yours? What's your take on that?
That's great. So again, I work with clients from all backgrounds, all religious backgrounds, all denominations. The goal, and this could be a whole other podcast. On our welfare. Again, don't confuse the messenger with the message. Mm-hmm. The goal of religious practice, I hope, I believe, is to be open and accepting to everybody, and to provide everyone a space. And one of the words in Judaism we use for God is hamakom. We use it 2 times specifically. One is at the Passover Seder. We're talking about the 4 types of children who show up to the Seder, and we use it after, God forbid, a death. Baruch hamakom. The omnipresent, the one who holds the place and the space for everyone, should console a person. And what that means is that God, if we believe in God, or even if you don't, God has the space here for everybody, for everything, no matter what's going on for them. So if I believe that I'm channeling some godly energy, which I try, then my job is to be there for anybody, no matter what beliefs they come in with. And that works clinically, because I need to hold space for someone's cognitive distortions, and validate and show empathy for whatever it is they're thinking, even if it's a distortion, as well as any other belief they have about the world or about anything. And in teaching, this is something that I try to convey a lot. There's no trigger warnings. The world is very into trigger warnings. They say trigger warning. In therapy, as a therapist, we don't get trigger warnings. Anything could drop at any time. Any person could drop at any time. Any name could drop at any time. You never know what to expect. And when we hold a space, which I believe is really the place for anything, then those things happen, and then we can pick them up. So belief, no belief, cognitive distortion, cognitive, dissonance, cognitive correction, whatever it is, anything is possible. And I think that's, clients need to believe that. If I could hold that and I could embody that, then the client could embody that themselves, whether or not they believe in a higher power or they believe in whales. It doesn't really make a difference.
I think I want to say something that reframe what you said. If something happened to us when we were younger, growing up, if we had a bad experience with someone, to look at them as one individual and not blame a whole group of people, let's say.
Especially if they hurt us in the name of something else. Then for sure don't believe them.
Yeah. Because a lot of the times there are so many people who are struggling with, I don't know if I want to use the word religious trauma, but things that happened to them, whether they were in school and the teacher said something to them, a a religious leader said something to them, or let's call it a so-called religious person said something to them, and they took offense to it. And because of it now, they're upset at the message instead of the messenger. And I think for many, it takes years of work to understand that concept. And once you get there, it's so freeing because you kind of take your life back and know that you're in control. You're the author of your story. And for many, that's difficult because of the pain that they experienced.
And sometimes it's that feeling like, to go back to, what you started with, like, sometimes people don't feel like anyone's there. And it takes a long time to recognize what that power in their life is that they feel abandoned them. And recreate that in a way that works for them. And it could take many, many years, but it's very doable, and it's important to have patience with ourselves and with others, obviously, but with ourselves too.
Wow. How do you measure progress with clients who have spiritual goals?
What's the opposite? What's the opposite of pro?
You tell me.
Con, right? Pros
and
cons.
Okay.
So what's the opposite of progress?
No progress?
Congress. Okay. Sometimes I could have been a dentist. Anyway, we measure progress by how the client measures the progress. So it's like, are they seeing changes? Are they noticing things differently? The way I measure progress is expansiveness of spirit. Is someone open to new ideas, to new experiences, to differences of opinion? Working towards like being non-judgmental, first of themselves and then of others, because then the person will start experiencing less stress. Because the less we hold on to, metaphysically, spiritually, emotionally, the lighter we feel, cognitively, emotionally, and across all planes, and the easier life becomes. Not because the things on the outside change, but because the way we're looking at them and the way we're holding on to them changes. So, progress could be a willingness to date. It could be a willingness to start a new job. It could be a willingness to leave a job. It could be a willingness to take a day off. It could be a willingness to go back to school. It could just be being okay with not doing any of those things. Something that's the most important thing.
Just
the radical acceptance.
Allowing yourself to just be. Something very special about your toolbox is that also you're into music. Tell me a little bit about that. And what role does that play with spirituality and connecting with others in the world?
So one of the ways I personally connect to spirituality is through music. Music is very powerful. It's an experience that could take you from where you are to where you want to be. It's transformative. Many religions use music in their forms of meditation, communion, prayer, Judaism as well. Especially, again, in the Eastern tradition, chanting is very powerful. And it was very interesting. Last week, there was this concert. 2 weeks ago, there was this big concert, MS regarding Yishe Ribo. And I unfortunately wasn't there. But, the image and the visuals and the seeing of 15,000 people singing a song together, singing songs together, sharing music together, it's like these people are looking for something. They're trying to mend a broken world. And music has the power to do that. People come together and they close their eyes and differences melt away. And the music has a way of getting in past the place where words can't go. The tricky part is then actually making that experience tangible. And I think it's difficult. And trying to do that as a therapist, coming to therapy is a very Western, kind of, this is TPT, this is evidence-based, and here's music, and here's meditation, and here's spirituality, and this is very Eastern. And then taking these intangible ideas and saying, how do we take music, which is a spiritual thing? You can't see music, you can read music notes, but music in and of itself, the sound of music is above, slightly above, I guess, a human perception in a way. How do we then, again, combine these two things, which we're trying to do, and infuse our lives with something that's at once above, but also very much grounded?
I'm beyond inspired. I really am. Your clients are lucky, I got to tell you that. So let's kind of give it to the universe as we're talking. So I have this interesting way of ending our talk. So I throw this ball to you.
Okay.
You catch the ball. Wherever your thumb lands on, that's the question you read. So I guess it's up to the universe where your thumbs are going to land. Are you ready? Here you go. Good catch.
I'm on two things. One is the green one, my childhood dream, and one is my biggest waste of time.
Whatever you feel is best.
Let's go with the childhood dream. So the story is told. Again, I'm going to throw out some names, pretend you know who they are. I'm also pretending I know who they am because I have no idea. But these are the traditions, and we could do another session on the Hasidic story and Hasidic Shemaises and how they influence the therapy as well. But here's one of my favorites, classic story. His name was Rebbeir of Primishlan. Again, Eastern Europe, Ukraine, Romania, Poland, depending on the day, the date and the time of year and the season. And even nowadays, it's hard to know. Rebbeir of Primishlan, one of the early Hasidic rabbis, a student of the Baal Shem Tov in that era, late 1700s. And the story is he was a frail, kind of weak, person. Wasn't a man of strength. Wasn't a very wealthy individual. Kind of, kept to himself. He had a small following, and people would come and ask him for advice and pray together with him and share in the religious experience. And many individuals, especially in the Hasidic tradition, have this ritual where they go to a mikvah every day. They bathe in pure rainwater. And the way Rebbeir would do this was there was a small, sort of secluded area on top of a hill in his town, and that was his mikvah, his ritual bath. And he would go early in the morning, usually 4 or 5 in the morning, before his devotions and the prayers, and meditate there, and then dip, and then go to the synagogue. So there was, especially in the early Hasidic movement, there was some antis, what they call misnagdim. They were against the Hasidic spirit, and they didn't really understand it. And there was one fellow who saw Rebbeir do this, and he didn't really believe that he could climb this hill. It was a steep hill, and it was often icy and watery and slippery, and didn't really sound this frail kind of guy. Didn't go to gym, wasn't running, wasn't lifting anything. How could he get up this? It didn't make sense. So he's like, one day I'm going to follow him. See, the whole thing's a joke. He doesn't really go. So he hides out 4 o'clock in the morning. He stakes out the rabbi, and Rebbeir starts to walk up the hill unperturbed, just going up, doing his thing, whistling to himself, singing to himself, going up the hill, and the ice, the snow, everything, nothing's bothering him. So this guy's like, I got to follow him. Well, what's this magic trick? He starts walking up. He's slipping. He's falling. He can't get up. He just takes a tumble, and he's like stuck. About a half hour or an hour later, Rebbeir comes down. He's walking down the mountain, the hill, and he sees this poor fellow, and he gives him a hand. He helps him up. And he takes him down. Asks him if he's okay. And the man said, I don't understand. You're a magician? What do you do? Like, you have a name of God? What do you do? He says, Rebbeir says it's very simple. If you hold on to what's above, you don't fall below. Mm. And I think that's my childhood dream. My childhood dream is to grasp on so strongly. In the world, even in the Eastern tradition, which I have a lot of respect for, there's the expression, let go. I also think that's a mistake. I think we have to hold on. But we just have to know what we're holding on to. So my dream is for myself to hold on to something that's above, and to give that to others and to share that with others. If we hold on to what's above, then we're not going to fall below, and we could all have a shared experience of, this humanistic experience where we all come together, and bring light into the world.
Drop the mic. Not this mic, but I love that. What a way to end today's show. Thank you so much.
Thank you. This is amazing. So much fun. What
a way to be able to kind of learn about the work you do, but also kind of like after this talk, I'm definitely on my drive home. I will be doing some of my inner work, because I think that's something that we can all do. And especially when I share sometimes to my clients that, therapists see therapists, or they have supervision, and this is the work they do. Just because we're on the other side of the, the table or the couch or whatever it is, doesn't mean we're greater in any way. We're all humans, and we're all exploring, we're all learning, we're all growing. So this was awesome. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you. It was amazing.
All right. To all our listeners.
You get to share resources if people are looking for more.
Sure, definitely. Yeah. If you guys want to connect with Hudi, you absolutely should reach out. When I share this podcast, I will definitely include your information. But how does one get in contact with you?
I guess the easiest way is the website, HudiKowalskyCounseling.com. Email address is there, phone numbers there, Instagram, Hudi K Counseling. and LinkedIn, or
And I have to mention, you work primarily with young adults, like 16 and up.
Yeah, but 20s, 30s, we're all young adults at heart. So I work with couples as well. I trained in the Ackerman Institute. Again, we didn't even talk so much about the formal training.
All right,
But,
that's going to be on part 2, everybody.
Yeah, part 2. All right.
All right.
Thank you so
What
much.
a
This
day.
was amazing.
Of
Thank you.
course.
Appreciate it.